You're listening to Behind the Blonde. Hi, I'm Kirby Myers, and this is a podcast for anyone who's ever been in the opposite place of where they want to be. I am so excited for today's episode. I know that you've heard a lot about him. I have been sharing a lot of our story because our story is a big part of my story. And when we left off last week, I talked about how I removed alcohol from my life, which affected every facet of my relationship. So with me today is my husband and also my absolute best friend. I'm so excited. Britt Myers, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be on the show and your first guest. I think I'm your first guest.
You're my first guest.
All right. And Kirby said, hey, would you like to come on and share your most intimate and interpersonal lifestyle secrets on a podcast? And I said, sure, why not? So I'm so excited about that. But no, I'm honored. You've been doing a great job, and to come on with you and listen to it and be a part of it. I know I'm context. You have to let people know I exist, and that.
But you're not just context. So
okay.
Britt is actually going to be our regular monthly guest host. And today we're going to talk about something that has been really huge. I've mentioned before that this podcast, it's not just about addiction, but addiction and overcoming that is a huge part of my story. But there are so many things that I want to cover, and relationships and sex and parenting and building businesses. So Britt and I are going to discuss a lot of those things as we move forward. But today, since I have been laying the foundation of my story, of finding this sobriety and allowing that to be the best version of myself and continuing to work on that every day, because as I remind everybody out there and myself, it is constant work. It will never be done, but it is that wanting, it's that knowing of continuing to get better. And I think that that parlays into relationships as well. And so for Britt and I, when we met, as you heard last time, it was really one of these crazy stories that I didn't think existed. It was truly one of those stories where you just meet your person. And I remember describing to somebody once when I met you, it was just like, oh, there you are. Like, I didn't know that I'd been waiting for you my whole life. It was really that simple. And then it was that fucking complicated. And it's gotten complicated and treacherous. I mean, we have gone down to just some really deep, dark places over the courses of the years. But I said last time, we've come out stronger and stronger and stronger. So I really wanted to bring Britt on today because I know that over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me what it looks like for your partner when one person in a relationship chooses to stop drinking, and drinking is a big part of your lifestyle. We were just actually at breakfast with our daughter, and we were chatting with her about how we were going to do the podcast and about drinking and about how in our generation, now I just turned 40, Britt's 48, how when we grew up, drinking was such a rite of passage. It was just something that everybody did.
Yeah, I think you were talking about some of the differences maybe between my take on drinking and being a guy particularly, and I know it applies to everyone, but the way I grew up, probably the way a lot of people grew up, a lot of guys, is drinking's really, when you think about it, it's tied to ego. It's tied to, hey, your social status. How much can you drink? Can that guy hang? How much did you just have? How many shots can you do and still keep going? Go to the golf course. And I think when you talk about that, I also want to be careful. Your podcast talks about this and your struggles and your accomplishments and all that comes with it. And, I know you do a great job of this. It's certainly not an indictment of anyone else and how they want to live their life, right?
Totally.
So it's just sharing why it's been great for you and it's been good for me and how you brought me along on that. But yes, I was conditioned most of my life, starting in high school, that to be part of the crowd, to really hang. And I played sports and did all the things, and I have ego, and I get that that's a part of it, but how much can you drink? And so, whether you are genetically, scientifically an alcoholic, or if it's just something that you build a tolerance to at some point, it's really just a part of your life when you drink that much. It's not just something you have to have in the morning per se, but it is something that you really can't detach it from your social life. It's everything you do. Where am I going tonight? What event is it? Who are we hanging out with? But, what are we drinking? So I think when you talk about this and I listen to your podcast, I think about when it stopped. It changed who I was, changed who you were. It changed when we met. It was who we were, and then we became different people. So I think there's fears, and we'll talk about that.
I was going to say it was really scary, I think, for both of us for different reasons.
Yeah, I still got to love this person that, you talk about falling in love instantly, but we fell in love as heavy drinkers. And now, are we those same people? Do we still have something that cliques, and those things are scary. And you talked about losing friends, that you don't really lose friends, you just lose people or whatever it might be. But I don't necessarily agree with that. So I have our first podcast disagreement.
I'm here for it.
I still have people that I know I could call right now that would be there for me, that I used to hang out with all of the time. I can think of some names here, but I've been on the other side of that. I remember when I drank all the time, when someone would show up that didn't drink, and it was sort of like, ooh, like, I don't know, like, you don't dislike them, but they're not really on the same level, on the same, they don't have as much fun.
I was 100% that person. I was the biggest pusher. I wanted everybody to be on the same page. I would pour heavy, and it was like I wanted to amp the party up. So I continue, but yeah, that was a big thing.
No, I'll keep talking. Now, first of all, I will say real quick, as a side note, we've done I have a podcast, and it's no plug. I don't do it much anymore,
Plug it, baby.
But the one time you came on the podcast with me, just you and I, the only feedback I got was for me to shut up and let Kirby talk more. And you can see why. And so I want to be conscious of that today, but I am the guest. But I will say, on the losing friends note and drinking, that was a really tough thing for me, because socially, that's what connected me to most people. And when you stop doing it, it's not necessarily you can't be friends anymore, but you realize, like, man, a lot of the things we did was through drinking. It was through having cocktails together at night and that kind of thing. And when you take a step back out of that, they don't necessarily, no one's mean, but they don't really want you around, or you're not really kind of on the list anymore, and you don't really want to do that anymore because it's such a different vibe. It doesn't mean drinkers and non-drinkers can't hang out, but when you're talking about the context of good friends, or who you thought were good friends, I don't see them as not friends anymore, someone I couldn't call and confine in. I just see it more as, we've lost that thing that we enjoyed together, because I enjoyed drinking. I really did. So I want to point that out too. It's not like I'm sitting here and calling people out or saying how horrible it might be for somebody, or somebody that it's not. I certainly enjoyed having a drink and a cocktail or a beer here and there.
And you can still do that, by the way. Britt still has the occasional drink. It's far and few between, but he does not have that chip that I have. He can have 1 or 2 beers on the golf course and then stop. Like, that was never an option for me.
It's funny, because I guess sort of the progression of this thought is, I had drank so much for so long, like a lot of people, and I could hold my drinks like a lot of people could. And I put pride in that. If you really think your egos
totally
can separate from that, it's not. It's like, hey, look how much I can hold.
I put pride in drinking how much you could drink. I was like, I had to keep up with you. That was part of it.
Right. But the flip side of that is, it's funny how quickly, when I stopped drinking as much, and a big part of it, we'll talk, I know you want to get into my progression to drinking less and how that looked when you stopped and I was still sort of doing it, and were we completely going to be honest with each other that you wanted me to drink less, and could we coexist in this realm before I drink and you didn't? But the truth is, as I drank less and less, it got easier because my tolerance got less and less, and I realized how much I didn't like the feeling. And that it took time, and I think the way we did it, not knowing and not even knowing how to navigate it, we just did it. And I think you gave me that grace, and it wasn't always beautiful or rosy, but had you just come to me the day, and I know for some who are dealing with alcoholics in the family, and you get home and the alcohol needs to be out of the house. And if you love that person, you need to stop, and I get that. So I'm certainly not making light of that, but for me, you were able to give me that grace in some way or another, where it was a progression, and I did less and less, and that was a lot easier for me than someone to come and say, you got to stop now. You just can't do it.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, to be fair, I don't feel like I was that way. I mentioned last episode that I felt like I was unintentionally playing games in a way where I knew that I needed you to stop, but I couldn't say it because I didn't want to put you in a corner, because my fear, like your fear of the social life and losing all that, my fear was I was going to lose you. And I don't want to start crying, but I just was so terrified that if you didn't have those outlets, and I had all of a sudden become the girl. I mean, our social life was insane. We were everywhere all of the time. We were at every event, every party. I mean, if there was an excuse or a reason to go out and get dressed up and drink, we were there. And I loved it. I mean, I loved it too. I loved that part of it. I loved that first hour, second hour. But then again, in that witching hour, I was the one that was then alone still drinking. So for me, when I knew that this had to be my new normal, and I didn't know if you were going to come along with that, to just say you had to stop, I wasn't capable of doing that, because my thought of could I live without this man was so unbelievably terrifying, because I knew deep down inside, if I'm being fully honest, which we've had all these conversations now. And again, this has taken, I talked last episode too about time. these things take so much time. This has been years. I mean, years in the making of us getting to a place where we could really be open and honest and talk to each other about how we really felt and communicate. And I think that one of the biggest things for me that changed for the best with us was looking back. I think we've always been best friends, but I don't think our communication really was super healthy until we stopped drinking, because we were able to have these really, really honest, clear conversations with each other and move forward. But if I had put a line in the sand, I was so scared that I would lose you. But underneath it all, I knew that I would not be able to long term be in this relationship if you kept drinking on the level that you kept drinking. So you being able to get to that progression on your own was amazing. So I am curious if that progression was that initially because you were afraid you would, like, was it the opposite but similar, that you were afraid you would lose me if you didn't fall? Were we kind of like,
I think that's always there's so many dynamics that come with it. I think that's a big part of it. I think, and I think that's why you have me here talking today for others who are listening. What if my husband or my wife or my partner, whatever that looks like, does it and I don't, or they don't fully commit? And I don't think there's any one answer for it. I know for me, I'm a guy, and again, ego and all that. I don't like being controlled. I don't like anyone telling me how I have to do something or what I have to do. And I think that most guys would admit.
I'm really good at nagging too.
Yeah. So
we have a code word, by the way. It's called McLovin. If I repeat myself, he says McLovin, and then I have to zipit.com. I highly recommend that.
But yeah, I don't think anyone likes being controlled. And I think when people listen, if they're just the casual person talking to you about drinking, and they talk, they're hearing about not drinking and this choice and what it looks like, they might even feel a little bit like, oh, that person's trying to tell me how to live,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they have it, and it feels someone like you're being talked down to or told how to live, which I know is not the case with what you're doing. You're bearing what's been a transformative moment for you and enhanced your life and our relationship and me. But for me, in during that time, looking back, I didn't like being told what to do. I wanted to do it on my terms, regardless if I was still being persuaded and
I think you did feel that at times, though. I think some of our biggest
Absolutely.
fights came from the fact that you felt like I had this sense of greaterness at this point, and I didn't mean to come across like that, but maybe I was with you saying it in a way that made you feel like, oh, I've found the light and you haven't, and it made you feel less than, and you would feel defensive, and it would cause
It can
a
feel
lot of
preachy,
strain.
yeah. And it's not necessarily you're always doing that, and you weren't always doing that, but it can feel preachy on the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
It can feel, how dare you tell me, especially when we met this way. And then there's all these other things you're navigating that will come into play for anybody who is in our shoes or in our shoes and going down this road. Like, what if I keep drinking a little bit and you don't? But the circle of friends, the couples we would hang out with, now am I going on my own?
Yeah.
And it starts to feel like almost like not a divorce, but a piece of you is divorcing from each other, right? And I really don't think long term you could go, it'd be difficult. And there's probably people out there that can do a podcast and talk about it who have made it work, that drink heavily and the other one doesn't. But I think to have the level of intimacy in the relationship, at least for me, there's no way. At some point, something had to give. And you probably see that a lot with couples. One stops drinking for a bit and comes back to it, or one has to come the other way, because there's just a gap between the day-to-day lifestyle of who you hang out with. And again, doesn't mean you can't hang out.
Well, and I mentioned that. I brought that up last episode as well, that, I quit. The first time I ever gave it a real college try was for a couple months. And I came back to it when you were kind of still, drinking. And I just felt like I didn't really, it was almost like if you can't beat them, join them. I don't know. That's a bad way to say it, but it was easier. It was easier. It was easier because I was so alone. I felt so lonely. I didn't mention this, but during that period, that's when I did go to 2 women's meetings at AA. And I think AA is a fantastic program and it's helped millions of people, but it wasn't for me. It didn't align with me. And so doing it on my own, not doing it with rehab, not doing it with, counseling, and just like grin and bearing it, if you will, when I did come home that day and you were here, and it wasn't like you guys were blackout, but you'd been drinking, watching football, and I was just so fucking tired of this fight in myself, and it was just easier. And then, as I said, it was 4 months of just me getting really, absolutely disgusted with myself. And then I quit for good. And I'm trying to think the timeline when I quit. I think it maybe was about a year or so afterwards when you really started to drink less.
Close to a year, yeah. And again, so many factors coming into it: the social circles, drinking less tolerance, and I'd find that. And again, I know some people struggle mightily with just waking up in the morning and needing a drink, or go 4 years sober, and then suddenly it's just I can't imagine having. I'm thankful I don't have that struggle.
Yeah.
But my having less tolerance over time really helped me because I didn't want it as much, because when I did, man, you talk about really feeling the effects the next day, or even just feeling too much sugar and stuff, mixers or whatever it is in my stomach. It just wasn't there anymore. So that made that easier. I think the toughest part for me was the social portion of it. And still to this day, somebody says, when do you most want to drink? You know, and I go out with the guys and have a couple beers on the golf course type stuff here and there, and even less of that. But the toughest part for me is the social scene. If I'm out and there's a group of people, just having that glass in my hand, or having something just to sort of feel the social connection. And I know that sounds silly, but when you stop doing it and you've been doing it most of your life, I guess I hear, I never smoked cigarettes, but I hear similar people say sometimes it's just holding that cigarette in my hand, and for me it's holding that cocktail glass in my hand, or having that beer, or a glass of wine with a steak, just something that makes me feel.
Well, there's a romanticism to it as well. I mean, you talked about something that I think, again, with our generation and anybody can relate to, that's, maybe 35 and up, especially 30 and up. We did have this upbringing where it was marketed to us. It was glamorized to us. It was the cool thing to do. All the cool kids drank. You talked about, and I really appreciate you acknowledging that in the male society that it's this it gets tied to masculinity, where I remember when I quit and we would be at events together, I'd overhear some guys, you'd be like, no, I'm not having one, because you were maybe being, respectful of me on that evening. And it was kind of like, they'd almost hit your arm and be like, oh, come on, bro. Like, it was almost like you're not cool if you're not having the
bro
drink.
Society.
The bro society.
Yeah, we'd kind of poke fun at the guys, but there's a lot of guys, counting beers as they drink, or the stories the next day. The most romanticized stories the next day is, hey, did you see Bob? He drank a whole handle of something, or whatever it is. And we put a lot of, some of it's humorous, some of it's a little bit real, like, hey, he can do it. But the truth is, and still have a lot of fun drinking with the guys. I mean, some of my best memories are drinking with my buddies at ball games and trips and in the socializing. But, I can trace back most bad decisions I ever made in my life, and bad things that happened, and things that had long-term effects and some short-term, and relationship effects and everything else. Drinking was probably was involved every single time.
So to that point, relationship-wise, obviously friendships you just mentioned, but intimacy relationship-wise, I think that we leveled up, and we continue to do that. And that's my favorite thing about you, is that I fall in love with you. I think we fall in love with each other over and over again. I've never fallen out of love with you, but we've been at points where it's been really, really scary. And I think that being with somebody that you can fall in love with over and over again is the most beautiful thing. But I think that, to your point, not having it anymore just gives you this whole 2020 lens on your relationship, and you're able to go back to the basics. And like when you said we met and we drank so much, when we removed it, I think the scary part, to your point, is, are we still going to have all this in common? And I knew that we were best friends, but all of a sudden, when you're not going out all the time and you're just home on the couch, it's just you and me. We're finding out, like, do we really have that much in common? Are we really that, can we just hang out and not talk and be in total comfortable silence and love each other's, company without some big conversation? And then on the flip side, can I talk to him about absolutely everything that's on my mind, which obviously I could not have a more supportive partner. So that was such a beautiful experience to find in a relationship. So even though that's really scary, I guess what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, it's kind of just such a beautiful transformation to find out what's underneath it all, what's really left there when you get down to this cellular level without anything else. And you also did bring up smoking. Britt was never a smoker. I want to publicly apologize for my breath. And I'm like, if somebody loved me. Like, there was never a question that you must have been head over heels in love with me, because the amount of cigarettes that I smoked and the alcohol and waking up in the morning and still making out with me, which making out is one of our favorite things to do. Making out is so underrated, by the way. Make out all the time. It's awesome.
I don't think anyone watching, if you can see this podcast, is wondering how I tolerated that. But I appreciate you saying
Well,
that. So,
but cigarette breath is just, I love you.
I think timing is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're talking about when it happened and on what terms. And also, you look at my age, I'm 48. So this all started, I wonder if I had been 38, how that would have been. So,
Really good point.
there's different timing, and everybody's different.
Mhm.
Everybody has a different moment for them and how they do it. And it comes down to, as hokey and as cliche as it sounds, is, what's more important to you in your relationship versus your independence, what you're going to, some of the things that you think makes you independent is probably what I should say. But again, because drinking was such a big part of who we were and what we were doing when we met, it was extremely scary when it was like, wait a minute, now you're a different person, maybe, and in a bit, it's very vulnerable. I don't want to say that everybody that drinks is hiding something. That's not what I'm saying. But if you do want to bury some things that you struggle with, whether it's insecurities or anger or, for most guys, things like that, drinking helps do that. Blame it on the drinking or ignore it with the drinking. So when it's gone, the curtain's up, right? And you're like,
So, Britton, what did you find that you were hiding? What did you learn most about yourself?
oh, I knew, if we're honest with ourselves, you kind of know your faults, right? You know what you struggle with. My whole life, I've always struggled and tried to face those struggles and know where they come from. I'm not one of those people that I'm a guy, it's just what guys do. I think insecurities are there. I think jealousy's there. I think depending on what your upbringing and things that might affect some of that stuff, anger or whatever it is. And alcohol didn't just hide some of that, or it exasperated some of that stuff, right? Because if those are things you deal with, alcohol is only going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And I knew that already. I had a good idea of that, but being able to get on the other side of it and see it, I'm certainly not perfect, and I still struggle with these things, just like any human does. But to be able to see it more clearly and then be like, man, I see kind of what I'm doing here or falling into that trap. For me, alcohol obviously only enhanced some of the things that didn't need to be enhanced.
Do you remember anything specifically? Obviously, I've shared some stories. Is there any times that you remember in our relationship that you can look back on that you especially, I don't know, are not proud of as a couple or yourself?
There's plenty, and not all that I want to sit here and share on a podcast. I'm not you. And I know that's what you want, but I think our fights, we would argue, I think, being quick to be defensive or quick to be angry or quick to snap or something like that. Not physically,
No.
but angry.
I mean, we would scream at each other. Like, it was not healthy. It was not good at all. I mean, we would get in some really, really, really big blow up fights, and I mean, I would just be hysterical. You would be so angry. And I think another point to leveling up the intimacy in the relationships is that this is not to say that we don't still fight. Of course we do, but we don't fight anymore. Like, once we've removed alcohol, we have had such a healthier relationship. And anytime we do have a disagreement or something comes up, we are able to talk about it, and it's also really far and few between.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to get away from this because you're right, but a part of that is, it's timing for everyone. And I know some people are different at 38 and 28 and 48 than others, but for me, it would have been more difficult at 38. So for me, the timing was good. It just worked out that way. And I'm not saying I couldn't have done it at 38, but at 48, and going back the last couple of years, 47, 46, I probably was really able to see too, like, man, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
I as I'm getting older, to get up and want to go do some kind of exercise or just get on top of something at work or whatever it is, not having that hanging, literally, no pun intended, hanging over me, right? The night before, you're like, you can really, and I knew obviously anybody would say, well, of course I'd probably feel better if I didn't drink,
Right.
but to really see it and feel it, made a huge difference. And all those, of course I wanted to do it for you.
I mean, there were weekends that we didn't have the kids that we would stay. I mean, now we're up. I mean, if we're not awake by 7 a.m., I mean, then like what? And there were weekends that we would lay in bed till
Or
10,
we would
11
take
o'clock.
trips, and the trip would revolve around drinking,
100.
right? And so
Our wedding when we got married. I
uh,
mean, we eloped originally. And I
wake up in
remember,
hotel rooms at 1 in the afternoon and stuff like that, which
yeah,
seemed normal back then. And for some
totally.
it is. And again, but for me, like, hey, I can get up at 7 and go enjoy coffee and maximize this vacation and
Yeah.
get out into a
It was a
town.
Bloody Mary and then another
Oh, yeah.
drink. And where were we
Nap
going? And
time.
I was like, what bars can you smoke in? I'll never forget. We got married and there was this old bar and it had one of those old pull cigarette machines. And I was so excited. It was literally my wedding day with the love of my life.
We love
And
dive bars.
we did. We love dive bars. Totally.
And
Where can we meet the most random people and like play music and I can smoke cigarettes?
we were good at that.
And we had a lot of fun.
there's no
But
doubt about it.
but we had a lot of fights, and the fighting is the thing that I miss the least.
I think for a lot of people I know, and I know some people would have a chemical need for alcohol that I'm friends with, and they would tell me, maybe would admit that, and some have addressed that. But for most of the people I know that still drink the way I did and that I'm still friends with, I think the FOMO of it all, it
Yeah.
is for me. The FOMO of it all is what's the
Ooh.
scariest part of it. What am I going to miss out on? Who am I not going to get to hang out with
The
anymore?
FOMO is a big one.
What events, what parties, and there is something to that. You're not going to go to the same events and parties all the time anymore because you realize I just went to those for the drinking.
Yes.
And if it's not there, of course, I
Yes.
love these people and I want to see them, but I can see them on my own terms somewhere else, not
Right.
drinking, right? Why would I go stand in a room when everyone else is standing around having their cocktails and I'm confident in me and I feel okay, but there's other stuff I could be doing. So the FOMO of it all is probably for a lot of people.
That was huge. That was honestly that first couple months when I didn't drink and then I went back to it. It was just like I knew I needed to do this, but I was still watching because our social circle hadn't changed at that point. So I was just constantly feeling like the odd man out and I was left out. And now it's so funny. You talk about FOMO. And almost 5 years later, I have JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. It's like the best thing in the world. But it took a really, 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 really long time.
And it may sound silly to some. I love music. I mean, I love
We
music.
love
and
music,
and we
yeah.
love live music.
Yeah.
And when you stop drinking, you're like, am I still going to be able to enjoy a show
Yeah.
the way I did when I was drinking?
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of it, right? I love to have a buzz and listen to the musician. And I still look back, I love that, right?
Mhm.
But you start finding things out about yourself like, oh, I love the music. I can have a good time.
Totally. And it's better.
Uh,
Concerts can be better because you're really at least for me, I was always worried about going back to the bar and getting another drink. Like dancing, I love to dance. I was so scared at events to dance. And now, when we do occasionally go, I'm the first one on the dance floor. And you're like, Kirby, we got to go. And I love it because I feel so free. And I'm not worried about getting that next drink. The other thing I think is better, and I know we are going to talk about intimacy a lot on this podcast, but I got to say to any of those couples out there that are watching, like people are scared to not have alcohol when they're having sex, even with married couples. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and usually alcohol is a big part of people's sex lives. And we've always had a very, very healthy sex life. And when we stopped drinking, it was like, oh my God, you just discover each other in a way that I didn't even know existed. The intimacy is next level.
we're not doing that on the podcast.
Having sex?
I think that's OnlyFans.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
there is
Key
that.
West is expensive, so.
I do think, context. I mean, and again, everybody's journey and outlook on it's different. I think it is better for you. I think in context for me, it's not necessarily better, but it's not worse. It's just different. It's
Yeah.
different. I still enjoy music. I love it. It's just different.
Oh, he did. I see what he did there. He went back to the music.
Well, unless you just want to keep talking about sex, I'm sure someone would love to hear that. But and I'm fine with that. But the context of it all being better, I'm not sure for me it's better and worse in some of these situations. It's just it's different, and it's different in a good way,
Yeah.
right? Like I like, but that was scary to me. Can I enjoy doing this because I've always done it since I was 16, 17 years old. I've always done it drinking. I've always gone camping drinking. I've always gone to concerts drinking.
I remember for me, how did I celebrate a birthday? My first birthday, I was like, how do I celebrate a birthday without drinking? And then guess what? I celebrated it with the family. And that's what I've done I used to love I was never a birthday month girl, but I wanted the big birthday party. I always wanted the party. And now every year on my birthday, what do I want to do? I want to be with the kids and I want to be with you. So
Yeah.
I think it's
just different. And it's on everyone's time, in my opinion, or in some ways, again, there's times when it needs to be on someone's time if they're struggling. But it's on your time, on your terms sometimes. And to be able to do it is not necessarily, I always worry about like somebody who gets sober or is going through this moment of sobriety and they're feeling great and they come to somebody and they're telling them how great it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in the church in the Southeast in the Bible Belt, and I would see people find Jesus in the Judeo-Christian world, whatever religion you apply it to. But in my world, it was finding Jesus. And I'd known him forever. And suddenly this person I'd seen every day had found Jesus, and they're throwing it on you. Like, you need what I have. You need what I have. And you're like, whoa, you're like, I get it. And so I feel like that's true with most things, including unless it's a life and death situation or alcoholism. If it's just bettering yourself and you're pushing it out there. For me too, I was always weary of somebody just pushing it on me, and really it's got to be on someone's terms because they have to believe it. It's just like anything, right?
Yeah.
In sales or in spirituality, like you have to want it first, right? You got to need it. And so for me, I'm saying all that to say, took me a while for me to want it because I was wanting it for you, right?
Yeah.
And that just, it can work, but not fully. And then when you start realizing like, okay, because at some point you're going to resent each other too. If I'm just doing it for you, and you're going to resent me too.
I think we were in that phase for a little while. Yeah.
And so it's got to be something you start to want, and for yourself. And okay, I'm going to try this out, not for Kirby anymore, but for me. And what does this look like, and what kind of relationships do I have? And I still got some really good friends who drink some, but I found that balance to find the ones that I hang out with that we just really have. It's really enhanced some conversations and relationships because I'm like, hey, I can go hang out with this guy and we can just talk about whatever and hang out. And you kind of find out who they are.
Don't you have better relationships because of it?
Yeah. You have better time management.
Yeah.
You have better, you have better, like, okay, I don't dislike this person, but that's mainly around drinking, and the conversation it's just going to be surface level without that. And so I can make a decision to go do something else for me or with somebody where I just feel like, and I think getting older too, you start making those decisions too for yourself.
100%.
Like where I want to give my time, and we're all people pleasers. You and I are both people pleasers, and saying yes to things.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've talked about, I think you did on one of the shows.
Well, the power of no, and that no is a complete sentence.
I get confused on what we've talked about coming up because I get all the pre-show planning and next show planning and what we've already talked about. So what's been on the shows. But the power of no and being able to say, no, that's my time. And I think not drinking is certainly a big part of it. It's helped enhance
Absolutely.
that.
So in the matter of time, I have one final question for you, because I do get this question a lot. And we talked about, obviously a lot of people who are in a similar situation where one does come to that knowing before the other person. What advice, if any, would you give to couples out there that are in a similar situation that were maybe on your side of the coin? What are, just a couple quick little antidotes that you might give them that would be helpful as they move through this process?
That's simple. Aside from giving each other grace, which is a word that I've used more lately in the last year than I've ever used in my life, even come from a, spiritual background, religious, but grace makes more sense to me now when you give it to others and give it to yourself. Yeah. But the simple thing is, I'm not a couples counselor, and certainly far from it. But we all play games, and typically it's passive aggressive. We want something, we want to control or get something from the other person. Instead of communicating honestly and saying, this is what I would like, and how do we get there? And it doesn't mean that's what I have to have and have to have it right now, but this is what I'd love to be getting towards. We play these games and we all do it back and forth. It's passive aggressive. And then I'm going to test you to see if you'll do it.
We did a lot of that.
And then, let's just see if you get
You'll
it right.
Skip a lot of bullshit if you don't do that.
And then it's, are you upset? No, I'm not mad.
Yes.
Yeah, you are. And we are. Are you upset about this? Nope. Or do you mind if I go have a couple drinks with these guys?
Oh, I would do that all the time.
And I would do it too. Let's be fair. I would do, but there's different. But it's the dynamics of relationship being passive aggressive and not having. Again, cliche advice, but clear communication.
Great advice. No, that's great advice, because you hit the nail on the head. We could have escalated. And again, I think everything happens for a reason. The way that everything happened for our process was exactly what it needed to be. But for anybody that's maybe just starting the process, that could escalate it a little bit for them and not go through as much of what we went through. by just being more honest with each other and doing it. And my recommendation would be not doing it in the heat of the moment, but by saying to them, hey, can we find some time when we both, are cool and calm and I just want to have like an honest moment, and then do it in a safe space.
Yeah. And my other advice is just the FOMO thing. I think if you really get down to it, for a lot of people, now I've got some friends, and he wouldn't mind me saying his name. One of my best friends, brother of mine, is Chad. And I've watched his struggles and his overcoming alcohol. It's a different world of what I'm talking about. So I'm conscious of people like my friend Chad, who is just an amazing man, amazing dad, and done some great things. But for most of my every day-to-day friends who drink, I would bet you 99.9% of guys, whether they admit it or not, is the FOMO, because most of us have done it since, if not high school, college.
It's retraining your brain. It really is. It's unlearning. It's all of these things that we have been conditioned to for so long. So in respect to time, I promised that one of the things I told Britt that he did not believe was that I was going to keep these podcasts relatively short, because if you were in our house when cameras weren't on, you would never believe it for a second, because I don't shut them off. So
I think they would believe it.
I love you so much. Thank you so much. Britt is going to be a regular guest. And as I mentioned, we are going to dive into so many other things, not just addiction. We really have run the gamut in our relationship, meeting, falling in love, and basically getting married overnight, blending our families. We both have businesses. We've come so far. We have gone so high, so low, back up again. And I think we've really found a stride, and we'll keep working on it forever. So we certainly don't have it figured out, but we are trying. And thank you all for listening so much. Was there something you wanted to add?
No, I had other thoughts, but that's for a different podcast, a different day.
Don't worry, you're coming on every month.
Yeah, I'm honored to be on your podcast, and for you've got a lot of great feedback, a lot of great comments of people who have listened, and whether they stopped drinking or not, have just enjoyed hearing you put yourself out there. Because when you first started doing this, I'll say this as we conclude, I will tell you, I was worried about bearing your soul to the world. You've never had a problem with that.
But this is on a different level.
Yeah. And so people kind of hearing, I'm a very private person, even though I'm in media and have newspaper, all this stuff, but like I'm a very private person by nature, and to put it all out there and you putting it out there, there's people, 99.9% of your listeners are going to listen because of the content and what it could mean to them, or just enjoying you. But there is a handful who just want to hear stuff so they can have that ammunition, and not having alcohol really makes you not care about that stuff as much either.
I really believe that my purpose in this life, on this planet, in this time that I have, as I've gotten older and I have overcome so many things, if my struggles, which look different than everybody else's, so even if yours are different, but they're all struggles, like if by me sharing my story so raw and so honestly can touch one person, can make one person feel less alone, can make one person feel like, oh, maybe I am doing the right thing and exploring this, or maybe that knowing that I have is true and I need to honor it and I need to listen to it, then I'm doing the right thing. So thank you.
You are. And I get to see the feedback, and it's not a boastful, look at this. It's when you get, and people, she loves the feedback. When she gets it, it means so much to you because it's something you're doing that's applying to someone. Yeah. And helping others has been a big part of what you do. And I'm not blowing smoke at the listeners, but especially women empowerment, and and I know there's men who listen to this too, but women who are, and hopefully if there's anything I said that could apply to your partner, particularly if they're a bullheaded, egotistical guy like me, you can say, hey, here's some things to think about. Maybe it helps out, and thanks for letting me do it.
And if you guys ever have any questions, please send them in. Britt is going to come on every month. So if you got relationship questions, whatever, again, we don't have it all figured out, but we will always be honest and open.
I can tell you what not to do.
Yeah, we can do a lot of that. So thank you for listening to Behind the Blonde.